Ruby allows us to restrict the visibility of methods in class definitions, and I'll explain this to you using, again, a subclass of entry. We'll call it the scream, and it has two method definitions. One is called toS, so we override the toS method, and we have a second method definition called scream in this class. By definition, methods have public visibility in Ruby. So toS here is implicitly defined as a public method. If we explicitly label a method or sequence of method definitions private, we restrict from where we can call those private methods. Specifically, private methods can only be called by instance methods within the class scream and its subclasses. So within the scream class, we can always call the scream method, and we can also always call it from subclasses of class scream. But we cannot call scream in any instance where we have any object identifier followed by a method called to scream. This would require us to be outside of the class scream and outside of any one of its subclasses, and therefore this cannot occur in your code. Now notice how we call scream in the toS method here. We're calling scream with a parameter of super, and by definition what this means is that in fact super refers to the toS method of the superclass of scream, which is entry. So in this call here, we're effectively calling scream, where the text parameter is replaced by a call to the toS method from entry. So we've seen that public methods can be called from anywhere, private methods can be called within the class they are defined in and in all of its subclasses, but Ruby also offers a method visibility of protected, and its meaning is a little bit more complicated than you might first think. It is similar to private, but it does allow calls of the form o.m, where m is the protected method and o is an object identifier. And it works for a protected m if the class within which the call occurs is actually a subclass of O's class. So to show you an example, let's assume we have our class scream here, and it is also a subclass of entry. But now we declare the scream method to be protected instead of being private. Remember, if it's private, we can not have calls of the form o.scream for any o. But if we define now a subclass of scream called holler, then we can awkwardly construct the toString method by creating a new instance of scream, and we'll initialize it with the author that was given to the holler, and then call upon this new scream object, the scream method, with the headline. And you see that basically we have created an object O here, and the object's class is scream. That's how we have initialized it. And the class within which the call occurs is the holler class. Clearly, we are calling upon this object within the class holler. And because holler is a subclass of scream, this call is allowed when scream is a protected method. So let's summarize a few of the caveats when using method visibility in Ruby. You should know that the default is public. Okay? So when you define a method within a class, the default is public. If you use public or private, then your methods are still accessible in subclasses. For public, this is obvious. For private, you may want to take note of that. If you're using methods such as send and eval in Ruby, you can circumvent all visibility constraints. So even if you have declared methods as private or protected, you can circumvent these visibility constraints using send and eval. And you saw that the visibility semantics for protected is a little bit different from what you may know from Java. And it is very likely that the visibility rules will change in future versions of Ruby. So if at all possible, I try to stay with public and private methods, but you should know the semantics of protected as well, of course. So in the IRB, I have defined the class Scream as a subclass of entry, have overridden its toS method, where we call Scream with super. Remember that super in this method definition refers to the super class's toS method. So this makes a call to entry's toS method. And you can see that Scream is in fact a protected method. And all it does, it returns the text it is presented with in uppercase. Class Holler is a subclass of Scream, and its toS method first creates an object O, which is an instance of Scream, and then it uses O to scream the headline. I've also created two instances here, two objects. S is a scream, so Bilbo screams that there is danger, and you can see what its toS method actually outputs. We have Bilbo Baggins's entry this 20th of September 2012 at 9:04 a.m. and the headline danger is printed as well. So this is a regular toS output of entry, if you will, just emphasized using this call to scream. So everything in the output is uppercase. And I've also created a holler object. Now Bilbo says, get out of here. And what its toS method does is defined here. It simply creates a scream and then uses Scream's scream method to output the uppercase text. So you see everything else of a regular blog entry is missing here. So given our understanding of the visibility constraints in Ruby, we know that a call like this can't go through because we're calling Scream outside of an eligible context, and Ruby will give us an error. So it says here, no method error, protected method Scream called for a particular entry, and this indicates that this call was disallowed because Scream was protected.